Laura, our middle child, was perfectly healthy until she turned 4 years old. That's when she was diagnosed with a rare tumor in her central nervous system. Unfortunately, when the treatment was over, Laura passed away.
Even while she was sick, she just loved watching the videos. Her favorite one was Let's Go in Service. This video really made her want to talk about Jehovah.
During the time that she was receiving chemotherapy treatments, which lowered her immunity, we couldn't even leave the house with her. But sometimes we'd bring her to get a checkup or get an exam done, and the doctor would say that everything was fine for now, that her immunity was okay, and the very first thing that she'd say to the doctor was, "So I can go in the ministry, right?" And the doctor would laugh and say, "Sure you can." And our family would take advantage of those times to go in field service together, as a family, all together. That made Laura so happy.
I have genuinely mixed feelings about this, because we're dealing here with the death of a beautiful little girl, and Ricardo and Carolina have my deepest and most profound sympathies and condolences. It's the worst nightmare of any parent for this to happen. It's wow. And I feel like I've been through some pretty difficult situations in my life. But one thing that always kind of comforts me is, well, it could be worse. And that's not to invalidate, the pain of what you're going through, but just the very most fleeting thought of losing one of my children, it's just unthinkable. So for Ricardo and Carolina to go through this tragedy is, well, it's devastating. And again, they have my most profound sympathies. That said, I have to object to the way their story is being used, to the way the memory of their child is being used. I find it disturbing that during Laura's final moments on earth, her final moments of life, the propaganda she was watching in the Become Jehovah's Friend, Caleb and Sophia cartoons was making her believe that what she needed to be doing was going out and recruiting people for an organization. I think there are much better uses of that time than doing that. At least when she was doing that, she was with her family. So I guess you could say, irrespective of exactly what it was she was doing, at least she was surrounded by her family. She was surrounded by loved ones. And that's the most important thing. But I just cannot help but feel it leaves a bad taste to think that that's how a dying girl was spending her final hours or days of mobility, was going round and working for this organization and helping or trying to help recruit people by manipulating them, by giving them material that is manipulative. So that's, I suppose, all I really have to say on this particular story. I do think that we're seeing a pattern as well of stories like this being used as emotional leverage. As I've repeatedly said on this channel, you can bypass people's need for logic and reason and sound argumentation if you can go right for the emotions. If you can give them a human story that they can relate to, you can effectively trick someone into thinking, well, you ought to be like that person because they are sticking with the organization despite going through this trial. That's the trickery that goes on. And we've seen it done before. Here is an example of an almost identical story being used in this way.
Felicity was a bright, vibrant little girl.
She was a beautiful kid, she really was. She embraced the fact that she was ill.
She was confident and courageous, knowing that Jehovah would resurrect her.
Felicity really enjoyed the privilege of being invited to share in the February broadcast of 2016. But sadly, just a few weeks later, Felicity passed away. When you watch a child die in her mother's arms, it's the most saddening thing you'll ever see.
The pain and the sting of death is so strong. But after some time, as time goes by, the sting starts to fade a little bit into, I just really miss that person.
Felicity often said that she felt the best when she was in the ministry because she didn't focus on her own illness. And since she's died, we can truly understand what she meant by that.
So it's almost the exact same story. We have this desperately poorly little girl, a little girl who is dying, and she's been convinced that the way she needs to use her final days is to promote an organization. And as if that weren't bad enough, her memory, Felicity's memory in this case, is used as emotionally manipulative propaganda to keep people trapped in a belief system that is abusive and manipulative. And that's what I find disgusting. I, again, completely empathize with Ben and Veronica in this case, and with Ricardo and Carolina. The worst thing that could happen. I just feel as though if they were to ever wake up, if they were to ever realize that they are being lied to and they were manipulated into lying to their children, they may feel very differently about their involvement and participation in this propaganda.